पायदार मुआशी तरक्की के लिए मुतवाज़न आबादी नागुज़ीर है। वज़ीर ख़ज़ाना मोहम्मद औरंगज़ेब कहते हैं पाकिस्तान को आबादी और क्लाइमेट चेंज जैसे अहम चैलेंजेस का सामना है। आबादी और मौसमियाती तब्दीली को संजीदा न लिया तो सूरत हाल संगीन होगी। आबादी और मईशत एक दूसरे से जुड़े हुए चैलेंज हैं। हमें आबादी के हिसाब से वसाइल का इंतज़ाम करना होता है। ज़्यादा आबादी मसाइल और गुर्बत का बायस बनती है। वज़ीर ख़ज़ाना मोहम्मद औरंगज़ेब ने कहा पाकिस्तान की मईशत मुस्बत सिमत में गामज़न है। वफाकी वज़ीर ख़ज़ाना मोहम्मद औरंगज़ेब का पॉपुलेशन काउंसिल की तकरीब से खिताब।
The indices are being tracked, but the reality is, again, that is not sustainable. And the climate resiliency bit, where everyone talks about that we have to move on to the adaptation path. It's less about emission, it's more about adaptation. Now, both of these are critical. And therefore, from my perspective and from my ministry's perspective, we see ourselves providing assistance, support, any way we can to the Minister of Climate Change and Minister of Health. That's our role. That's our role. Because, when I went to Washington, as soon as I assumed the role for the IMF World Bank spring meetings, for the first time I joined the meeting of the Coalition of Finance Ministers on Climate Change. And for a little while I wondered why I'm there. But I was very quick to figure out, and then over the last 18 months, I'm convinced that if the finance ministers don't play their role in taking these things mainstream, making them part of budgets, making them part of resource allocation, this is not going to go where we think and where we need this to go. Dr. Zeba Satha, your report that you just mentioned, it's commendable that it's 3 years of research and therefore data-driven. And therefore, in the 6 domains, what you have given us is actionable MIS, because it's MIS, and then what do you do with that MIS? And therefore, the kind of granularity that's been provided is, I think, very, very important. That's one aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is highlighting the interlinkages, the multiplier factor from what I have read in terms of how these two aspects reinforce each other. Actually, in Pakistan's case, negatively, whether it's the population momentum or where we are in terms of climate change. Now, some of the aspects that you have brought out in terms of providing insights into the geographical divide, the vulnerable districts, which are overwhelmingly concentrated in Balochistan, followed by Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and therefore the critical overlap that the populations which are already struggling in terms of whether it's poverty, infrastructure, limited services, what I would call social vulnerabilities, are the ones which end up being exposed mostly to climate shocks through drought, extreme temperature rises, or floods. I recall when Dr. Musaddiq was one of the first ones to reach Khyber Pakhtunkhwa when those floods came in, and I'm sure he will go into a lot of detail what he found there. He has been very vocal in terms of, the people, the haves and the have-nots, and what happened in terms of the discussions which need to be carried on. He's leading the 300-day plan, which has been asked by the Prime Minister, so that this does not recur as we go forward. But again,